Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, and certainly this afternoon, and after so many speeches, and I'll try to be very short and succinct to deliver something different. Ambassador Dalia spoke about the rice. I'll speak about the grains, the wheat. That's our daily supplements. My talk is really about the agenda for sustainability and corporate responsibility, a subject that's usually probably seen from the prospects of economy, people, and diversity. But it's very important to understand that sustainability really is something has to be on the agenda of every organization, so to seek growth, because unsustainable businesses will lose in the midst of what we talk about financialism, what we talk about, just profiteering. Usually that's the case. Every organization, yesterday Professor Spachi spoke about how Europe was diverted into sustainability, but again, on the financial, fiscal, policies, okay, they have underestimated the growth, and suddenly everybody, it's a financial agenda. I'm going to talk about the three areas. I'm going to show you the business case for sustainability agenda. Is to really make a commitment. I'm not going to read all of that. To make a commitment to the social environment, economic, and of course, the ethical values, because these are very important aspects of your sustainable economies. As we can see, from the studies that 53% agree that of CEOs agree that sustainability is important. The study conducted by UN Accenture shows that 93% agree with the sustainability, but most of them really do agree that some of the sustainability may be not achievable or difficult to implement. So, what do we mean? The landscape is changing. How do I attract and retain customers? CEO agrees 37%. Improve shareholder value, 34%. And of course, increase profits, 31%. We have ethical responsibility towards our nation, towards our people, to our generation. That's what sustainability is about. It's not about making money all the time, but what can we put back again so the generation can go forward. Today, we can see the ASEAN, how they're developing, the 10 countries getting together, and of course, their agenda is very, clear to be competitive landscape against others. So they created the mass. When we talk about the footprint of the sustainability and consumer business, we look at the sourcing, the manufacturing, distribution, market packaging, of course, the final end usage. Because without usage, okay, you don't sustain your products. And thus, I don't want to go into the fluctuating commodity market, food dollars, okay? We can see that over the past 10 years, the commodity market has increased tremendously. We have seen that agriculture prices, agricultural products have shot up. We are in the Gulf, we are good consumers. The best consumers here in the world are the Gulf region, especially when it comes to food. We don't grow our own food. We import most of our food. Most of the European and Asian countries dump, the Gulf with food. So therefore, if anything happens to the logistical side of it, we are doomed. Now, if I look why this is important for our business, we are a subsidized company. We provide our nation with subsidy when it comes to flour. That's where the bread. Okay, maybe that's not happening in Europe, but most of the Gulf countries have got some fiscal policies on subsidies where especially the grain is subsidized or the flour is subsidized. And we had worked out how can we achieve sustainability when it comes to the supply of a grain to the market. We conducted this study with the World Bank, and we looked at every model. We looked at the sustainable functions, looking at the domestic price, looking at the replenishment rate, and of course the size of reserve, because on the reserve size is very important. For every dollar spent on reserve or on food security is $1 less spent on education and health. And these are very important aspects, because if you don't spend on health, then where is the trade-off? Bahrain Flour Mill Company is a government, majority government-owned, so we provide the subsidy to the market. We import the wheat, and every year that's on increase. So we started with importation of around, it's a small size compared to the other Gulf region or countries, but we used to do importation about 60,000 metric ton per annum. Now we are up to 120,000 metric ton per annum. And most of our product comes from the European market, Americas. The supply chain really moves into the port area and then to the silos and, of course, to the mill. That's the logistical corridors. Comparatively, this is the cost comparative to some other countries. If I look, Bahrain is the highest cost. That's 2009, of course, figures. That really stays the same. Where I look at Netherlands, that's the lowest cost, because in Netherlands, you don't have the problem of the importation, because most of the grain comes from Europe. So on the logistical side, it cost me around, $20 per metric ton to move the good from the ship to the silos. And that's really a huge amount of money spent on logistics. So if I look 26 of it, logistics, storage, and of course the management of the goods itself. What are we thinking now to sustain that? Of course, we have to improve our milling capacity to satisfy strategic reserve, yet modifying that strategic reserve against the other expenditure where the government spend the money on education and, of course, on health. We have to relocate the existing mill to another location where we benefit from the efficiencies of new technologies. And, of course, we have to reduce our what we call the good or CFR price, because at the moment, because of our logistical issues, we pay around 25% higher than normal market rates. These are all cost savings which we have to put back into the system. So by 2030, that's our vision of the country. We have to increase to 150 metric ton. We have to increase our capacity by 450 metric ton. We have to make sure that we have got 6 months of consumption. And of course, storage capacity has to increase or doubled. On the agro market and port studies, we have to look at the agro-processing and vertically integrate our agro-business. So we don't depend a lot on importation, but we will increase our processing feed. So we will go vertical into processing other staple food for the nation. Of course, again, like Asia, the population very much depended on rice. That's the Gulf trend. Flour usually used to make bread. Now, having stated all of that is fantastic. We have done. How can we measure? And this is a challenge that we are facing everywhere. I mean, we talk about sustainability. How can we sustain, measure, and improve on our performance? Because at the end of the day, if you cannot measure it, it doesn't exist. And every CEO you ask about sustainability will state, okay, fine, how do you sustain? And that's where is the money? Here where the question comes in, what performance measure and tangible results are we going to have? This is where we are putting in the tangible measures, performance measures that we are to measure our sustainability rate. In the past, there were a few tools that were available. I mean, we know about these tools: the balance scorecard, the performance measure, the SMART pyramid, Baldrige criteria. All of these are quality-related measurement tools, and some of them may be related as fad, some of them may be related as trends. Six Sigma, all of these will improve your productivity. Germany, for example, was best known is for improved productivity. With increased productivity, you will increase your throughput. We have challenges, we have employment issues. Today, the market rate, we are a young generation. I mean, 60% of our population are young people below 26 years old, and these are looking for jobs. We have a problem as well with finding jobs for these nations, for these populations, because at the end of the day, government cannot sustain employing these staff all the time. So we're trying to entice the private sector, the SMEs, to take over employment. We play one part on that. On the corporate measurement, of course, reporting, we have to look at every measure within our supply chain management. So the end of performance measures is to reduce the cost as we go along. We measure and track the supply chain performance from the selection of the vendor to the performance of the vendor by putting the grain in the silos. I mean, managing grain is not easy. Okay, everybody eats bread, but you don't know where it's coming from, how you manage it, how you sustain it, how you blend it, and so on and so forth. We use a lot of water to mill the grain itself, so that's again, and electricity, and so on and so forth. All of these are energies that will, determine how you measure. So these are the priorities we have put in to our measuring supply chain sustainability, improve supply efficiency, social responsibility, innovation. These are qualitative measures that we look at. We have established reporting principles on materiality, stakeholder, sustainability content, and so on and so forth. The table goes on, and I don't want to bother you about it. One of the most important criteria for our sustainability measure is to link the value chain, the firm core value, with the stakeholder core values and the government core values. Because at the end of the day, if you do not mesh these kind of things and you do not put the values together, then you will not be able to move in and sustain your compatibility in the market. So, this is how the link is done. What is the company vision? What are the key thrusts? And of course, how do we go about relevant metrics and KPIs? Once we set these up, okay, and every executive, from the chairman to the lowest individual in the company, has to abide by the meshing of the two criteria. So, as something to take away, so what are the setting metrics, measures progress? There is underlying objective for the measurement terminology well-defined. We have information needed to obtain and make only the supply chain consistent. And we chose the supply chain for one simple reason, because our major cost is there. 90% of my cost comes from the acquisition of the grain, because I pay $400 for the grain per ton, where I pay for processing of it about only $90. So really, that's where the measurement comes in. These are the measurement by done. So we will look at implementing these measures and moving forward. I don't want to bore you a lot with the full supply chain. Of course, there are the example of sustainability and how we have maintained it. And thank you very much for your consideration and listening.